The Slormancer is a pixel graphics bullet hell ARPG that has mechanics so beautifully put together that you almost forget that the game's not done. It's still in early access, but all the power and progression systems are fully built out and extremely easy to learn and get addicted to. The Slormancer starts like any other ARPG. You choose a character, head off into a campaign, and start completing quests for the citizens of the world you're trying to save. You can choose one of the 3 starting heroes, typical bruiser sword-wielding hero, the typical quick and shifty rogue archer hero, or the typical blow-stuff-up wizard hero. Once you've made your choice, you head off to complete some random quest and can immediately tell the tone of the game. It's kinda dumb. Funny in a completely aware of itself kind of way, and I love it. The old hero of the kingdom is this buff golden Chad named Brian. Your call to adventure happens when you give him a poisoned protein shake, and right as he dies, the kingdom is ravaged by an evil, powerful being named Oh My God. All of the citizens have disappeared and you are the only one left to save the town. So you work with the king, who is absolutely clueless but is constantly reassured by his advisor. You're sent on a number of missions in new different locations to recover some plot pushing tool and come back to the town as your hub for all things crafting and selling before being told that whatever you did wasn't enough and you need to do something else. This tongue-in-cheek complete parody of the genre continues throughout the entire game. I absolutely adore this stuff, especially after a long day of work. Just give me that little chuckle, a little smile, and you've done well. 1 point for the comfort meter. I love when games don't take themselves too seriously. Yes, I am a huge fan of the grand adventure, the creation of a world that I can dive into and immerse myself in. But sometimes I just want to turn my brain off and hack and slash things in a non-serious, whimsical manner. And because it doesn't have a huge story element to it, it doesn't have a massive open world with all this content that's being made to fill up all the space, the Slormancer can stay simple. But simplicity doesn't mean shallow. The Slormancer only has a few mechanics that are extremely easy to understand at a base level, but they provide much more depth to the game than you realize. And that's where the Slormancer catches my attention. The gameplay loop is extremely simple. You teleport into the mission locations, kill a bunch of things all at once in a bullet hell sort of way, and then come back to parse through your loot. But the skills and progression mechanics, whew, this is where it gets interesting. The Slormancer has at least 13 different ways that you can affect your character's build. Your class is the base of your character, so it determines which Slorm Reapers and what skills you're going to be able to use. Your character attributes are the base building blocks of your stats. You have 8 different attributes, and you can choose how to spend your points. You get 1 point every level, so spend them wisely. Your class skills are the abilities that you unlock by gaining levels in your class. You unlock all of your skills pretty early on. Your support skill is unlocked once you reach level 10. This is another ability tied to your class specialization. Your class specialization choice will further improve your character's build in some way, basically giving you different playstyles depending on which one you choose. Your skill mastery levels unlock as you use the skill, giving you access to skill trees that improve the ability or alter it in some way. Slorm Reapers are your weapons. There's a crap ton of them that you can collect by closing breaches, these portal-like things that are in different missions. Each Slorm Reaper has its own bonus to it, providing a stat increase, a new skill, or interacting with one of the skills in your class's set. Slorm Reapers will also have an alignment. Basically, it's the blacksmith line who made the weapon. Once you get to the end game, you can complete runs in the Great Forge to get materials to upgrade your affinity with a certain blacksmith line. Raising your affinity will raise the stats and abilities of the weapons in that line. Ultimatums are trinkets found in the Slorm Temple that provide a bonus to your build. As of writing this script, I've only found 3, one that gives me a massive increase to my experience gained, another that gives me a massive increase to my movement speed, and another that increases my mana regen. The Ancestral Legacies feature is basically a massive skill tree that provides additional skills or stats to your characters. These are not tied to your class or specialization, so you can really play around with different elemental powers or defenses that you otherwise wouldn't get in your build. You only get a few Ancestral Legacy points though, unlocked throughout the campaign and after completing milestones in the endgame, so plan out your path accordingly. Reforging is your way to reroll stats on an item to tailor it to your build, and reinforcing is how you upgrade an item that you already love to have higher and higher of the same stats. You unlock both of these throughout the campaign. Last but not least are the Reaper runes. These babies you can get in the Great Forge after beating the Big Daddy Forge boss. The idea with these runes is that they further alter your Slorm Reapers to do something when a condition is met. You put together an activation rune, an effect rune, and then an enhancement rune to get the outcome you want for your build. I'm sure there's more lines of progression I'm forgetting to mention, but you get the idea. The best part about all these character power mechanics is that progression for each of these is easy and efficient. You would think that because you have so many different ways to affect your build that you would lose that efficiency and have to spend a ton of time on a new build. But because the gameplay loop is so simple and the resources and experience and skill points all come from the same core set of maps and enemies, all you have to do is pick one of the 3 activities and you'll be working on all of your character's progression at once. The endgame is a loop of 3 different activities, but done with special modifiers that make each time you play them feel a bit different. But each endgame activity gives a different endgame resource, so you want to make sure you're completing each one. Right now, since the game is still in early access, you don't quite get to finish the story, but you do have some amazingly fun builds to make and a set of goals the game gives you to make your character the absolute best it can be. And let me tell you, this whole progression system is incredibly addicting. You are constantly gaining levels in something. A character level here, a Slorm Reaper level there, a new skill mastery level that unlocks that final skill tree node for your build. You finally loot that last bit of Slorm you're looking for to upgrade that one skill that makes your build click. And holy shit, there's a new Slorm Reaper, maybe it's better than what I have. Let me refund all my skills and specializations and attributes and try something different because the effect on the Slorm Reaper gives me a crazy idea for a new amazing build. This constant drip feeding of progression kept me hooked for so long, and honestly I've only reached the endgame with one of the 3 base classes and haven't even finished my endgame goals yet. But okay, let's be a good game reviewer and give some fair critiques as well, because no game is perfect and the Slormancer is no exception. There's some minor gripes here and there, but the only thing I can really critique isn't really something bad the game does, but more so just the nature of the type of game it is. Sometimes the game can feel a bit one-tone. Not the mechanics, but the other stuff in the game, like the campaign missions or the endgame trio of activities. While the act of building a character is amazing, and the atmosphere in the game is pretty light and fun, I think when you think about what you're doing with each mission, it can start to feel a bit repetitive. Now, I know a lot of people are going to hear repetitive ARPG and say, what do you mean, Jack? It's an ARPG, of course it's repetitive. But I would say that in every ARPG, there is a slider of how repetitive things feel, and at what point that repetition starts to set in. In the Slormancer, that repetition sets in pretty quickly, and it relies heavily on the brilliant web of progression and loot mechanics to fuel your desire to play. The act missions are all the same. You fight your way through an instance killing the same enemies to get to an objective or a group of objectives, kill a wave of mobs or a boss or both, and then head on into the next mission. The 4 acts each have their own theme, enemies, and boss battles, but individual missions are basically the same. So you start to feel that repetition pretty early on in your journey. I think this may feel a bit more pronounced in the Slormancer because the game isn't finished yet. You can't fight the endgame boss, so you can't finish the campaign. After the short campaign, you're basically just doing one of 3 endgame activities over and over again. The repetition has purpose, of course. You are still progressing magnificently, getting better and better loot, crafting materials, Slorm Reapers, and more, but at the end of the day, you are really just doing 3 things over and over again. Though I will say, with an extremely small team developing this game, I don't really think that they need to worry about it too much. What the devs have done is create a fun hack-and-slash ARPG with build customization and progression being the main focus. And I think there are going to be a lot of people who really enjoy a game like that, myself included. I only bring this up in the review because I think some ARPG players may get lost in the monotony of completing the same missions over and over again. To say this in a bit more philosophical way, some people like games that provide a bit more extrinsic value, in the sense that the game provides a lot of the achievements and goals that you're aiming for, and you want to be as strong as you can because you want to reach the level that the game has set for you. Instead, I think the Slormancer focuses more on the intrinsic value of playing the game your way, wanting to see your build get better and better, wanting to try something new, get those progression dopamine points because you think something will work and you need your character to be stronger. The loot, weapon, and skill systems are complex tools to build whatever character you want and test that character out in the combat arenas. There are still goals in the Slormancer. I'm not saying that you won't have achievements to chase or bosses to beat or difficulty levels to climb. You definitely will, but I think the majority of the content in this game has been dedicated to making sure that you as the player have so many different ways to play. Anyway, I ended up taking a long time to explain what I meant by repetitive, only to make my last point the fact that this repetition ends up being one of the selling points for me. It's comfortable. It's addicting. It's a smooth experience that engages your brain but doesn't require complete attention at all times. It's a comfort game, and I love it. I don't know if the developers made the game this way on purpose, but there are so many little details of the game that lean into this comfort and convenience feel. Launch time from loading the game to getting back into your character is less than 15 seconds. You can refund and redistribute your character attributes, legacy points, skill points, and class specialization at any time. You can switch between Slorm Reapers at any time, giving you combinations of weapons and skills to fit any situation or build you have in mind. Each mission acts as a bite-sized piece of content, so you never feel like something is taking too long without a break, but the game also gives you the option to move on to the next mission immediately if you don't want to head back into town. Combat is pretty simple, but extremely good feeling. You get those little tingles in your nether regions every time an enemy is hit, and those sweet, sweet damage numbers start popping up in different colors. You can pause the game at any time and alter all of your character's abilities and most stats on the fly. So in the middle of a boss fight or a large group of enemies, you can alter your strategy if something isn't working. There's a built-in loot filter. The Slorm Temple has a feature where after you beat the enemies, the gold that dropped from the waves of enemies is automatically picked up. I really wish this happened with crafting materials too. WASD movement is really fluid, and although it can feel a bit floaty at first, you get used to it pretty fast. This ends up being an extremely comfortable feeling after a while, and you just sort of mindlessly run your character around the screen, never actually stopping the fight, just kind of running through, shooting projectiles and swinging your sword around. It's just a nice, calming feeling to play the game, and while it can get difficult and you can definitely have builds that don't work, it's not rocket science. It doesn't require some intense studying to figure out. And sometimes, we all need that one game that's waiting for us back at home with open arms, doesn't expect too much of us but is still there to cheer us on when we do something great, and likes to try and make us smile. To finish off the video, I'd like to give the Slormancer a thumbs up, a recommendation to all of you who love build customization and satisfying progression mechanics, and I'd like to pose a question to those who have played it before. What is Slorm? Is it life essence? It sounds like life essence. So when we use Slorm Reapers, are we taking the life essence from our enemies? We are, right? And if we're taking the life essence from our foes and using it to empower our own abilities, wouldn't that make us a Slormancer? Doesn't that make us part of the problem? Are we the villain? But most importantly, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a Slorm if you liked it, and subscribe for more Slorm like this. I hope you Slorm your Slorm in Slormland, and I can't wait to see what we talk about Slorm.